Colorado needs Deion for several reasons. Number one, they were in the dumpster before he got there. And then on top of that, he brings so much like attention and money to the town and to the school and so even from that standpoint alone, I think you should be backing the Brinks truck up. You know what I mean? Unless, and it's a dirty world, it's a dirty game, but unless you believe that Deion has gotten you back into prominence on a national level and you can get a better football coach in there now. Now you're talking something different. I wanted to talk a little bit about Deion here, okay? Okay, here it goes. So there's two things here. Number one, this is the news story today. He says, I ain't worried about me. Let's get everybody else straight first, then I'm good. Talking about his contract extension because it is contract extension time for Deion. He's been there a few years now.
2 years.
Yeah, a few seasons now. Now it's time to start talking about a contract extension. You know, and this is it's funny because, you know, Colorado needs Deion for several reasons. Number one, they were in the dumpster before he got there, right? It's in the dumpster before he got there. And then on top of that, he brings so much like attention and money to the town and to the school and so even from that standpoint alone, I think you should be backing the Brinks truck up. You know what I mean? Unless, and it's a dirty world, it's a dirty game, but unless you believe that Deion has gotten you back into prominence on a national level and you can get a better football coach in there now. Now you're talking something different. What do you think?
My take on it is a little bit different. I'm not sure like who's to blame or why this extension's not happening. My view on it, because again, I didn't think Deion would coach this coming season, is, you know, when Shadur leaves, if I'm Colorado and I like what's going on, my thought is I want to get in front of extension talks with Deion then, because not only am I going to lock him, like you know, reward him for the success he's had, his response to extension talks is also going to reveal to me his commitment and interest to doing this longer term.
Yeah.
And so that, you know, if he's the one, and there could be a scenario where Colorado maybe wants to talk about this, and Deion saying, well, hey, let's bring Marshall Faulk in at running back coach, and let's bring this other guy in and do this. I think they just hired another guy, I thought, today. I can't remember.
Yeah. Marshall Faulk. Oh, you're talking outside of Marshall Faulk.
I saw the other day.
Yeah.
And then there was another guy that was a pedigreed either player or coach that they're bringing into that situation. And it's like he's loading up this staff. And again, these guys aren't going to work for free, so I'm sure there's some costs there.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing, it still comes down to Deion in this sense. Is he basically creating this staff and all this situation where he could back out of this thing?
Yeah.
And just say, hey, give it to, you know, my top guy. He's experienced. He's great. You'll love it. And I'm going to go. Because, again, the other way to do that is, you know, and the way a lot of coaches do it is, you know, yeah, I'm going to sign my extension, and part of my extension is going to include a guarantee of a certain budget for assistant coaches and that sort of thing. But if Deion's the one pulling the strings on this,
yeah,
it's kind of interesting that he's taking this approach and kind of putting himself behind the show on this. And, again, if you're Colorado, I'd be a little uneasy. Because obviously we're going out and hiring these assistants that Deion's telling us to hire, but we don't necessarily have his commitment in terms of him signing an extension.
No, for sure.
So I think there's it's a very interesting situation.
It
There
is.
could be a lot to it when you kind of look at it.
Is it fair for Colorado to say say, hey, we need you to do better on the field? You know what I mean? Or we may not be moving forward with you?
I don't think that's what they're saying, and I don't think they're in a great position to say that.
Right, that's what I mean.
Because of this, though, it's and we talked about this in other segments of the show. Like, for over 2 years as head coach, they've had steady progress.
Yeah.
They got, went from 1 win or whatever to 4, then to 8 or 9 this year. And so there's progress there. Now, you just lost some real dudes to the NFL.
Right.
And is this roster better than the roster you had last year? Can we really expect, going from 8 wins to maybe 10 with this roster? I'm not sure you can. I mean, part of me feels the most realistic scenario is success for Colorado would be another kind of like 8-win season, but while showing more depth of roster. And more talent, more sustainable talent across the roster, not just a couple like crown jewels and some regular dirt. I think that would be a measure of success. Hell, if you can get 10 wins, that's a great job. But I going into this, if Deion gets 8 wins again and shows that this roster is getting deeper and more complete, I think that's demonstrable success.
No, for sure. Now, on the other side of things, of course, what was that? About last week, Deion was saying he wanted to, choose another school to go up against for their spring game or a joint spring game or joint spring practice or whatever you want to call it. Now, Syracuse, you got some, Syracuse as far as the, some of the guys on the team and coaching staff, stuff like that. They're trying to make that happen. They're stepping up, they want to make that happen. And I'm sure there'll be other schools lined up as well. If he wants to make that happen, if it can, logistically, not even sure.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a rule in place that would prevent that at this point.
Because we haven't really seen that as much.
No,
the NFL does it often.
Well, I would say this, like my son played soccer in Division I. Now, the soccer season is the fall, just like football. Now, in the spring, they were able to play 4 or 5 games. They didn't count to anything, but you went and played other schools. You only did that about 4 or 5 times in the spring. So it's permissible in soccer to a degree. So I don't know if there's a specific rule prohibiting it. I like the idea a lot. I think for a couple reasons. A lot of times with the spring, when you actually get to the spring game, a lot of schools do different stuff where they don't really make it a competitive game. A lot of schools don't play their better players very much at all and just kind of create it to be some kind of like weird showcase. I'd prefer to see a game. I'd prefer to see a game against. I always wanted a Garnet goal game, good against good. Let's play, mix up the rosters a little bit, and play a 4-quarter game. That doesn't happen. But say, hey, Colorado, we'll go play Syracuse. Let's fill the stadium one time in the spring and have some fun. And show where you're at. Yeah,
we'll see if they are able to do that. The Gators, that's what they do. Kind of the whatever, split the teams up and have a game. Yeah. They've been doing that for as long as I can remember.
Do they play that like a true game, like special teams kickoff, like one team wins, one team loses?
It's kind of how they do it is whatever the coach wants. So he creates situations. They do things like that, but they do keep score. They do keep stats. Yeah. But yeah, special teams, offense, defense, all of that stuff is there in it. But it's not a traditional football game. No.
Yeah.
Now my idea for Deion is to do the spring game against an HBCU. Right?
Solid.
Yeah. And the thing about it, I've thought about this in a bunch of different ways because I know some people will be like, well, competition-wise, how are you really getting better and stuff like that? Well, a lot of these Division I schools, even much better than Colorado, they play HBCUs their first game anyway.
Right.
You know what I mean? Miami has been doing it for God knows how long, just beating up on us. And although our year, but then Miami, there was a tie game pretty much into the fourth quarter. That's the highlight of my life.
Your life?
Yeah, man.
Wow.
I kind of got blown out after that, but hey.
Bubba had 0 snaps played in his life.
I was there, though, as a reporter. Okay. But, I just think, given, it just, I think that would be a great gesture. He doesn't have to do it. He doesn't owe anything to anybody. But I just think that would be a great gesture and great for both teams and both sides. I think that would work well.
Yeah.
For sure. Now,
play against the guy who said he wasn't swag.
I whoop up on him, right?
Invite his team out to Boulder.
Beat the dog crap.
That would be funny.
Have his players leaving out on stretchers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, the last thing before we get into some March Madness and stuff like that and the story, Eddie George left, whatever, 2 weeks ago or something to Bowling Green. Eddie George was, a coach of an HBCU, Tennessee State, where he played predominantly his NFL career at. And, Eddie was there for what, maybe 3 or 4 seasons, something like that.
Yeah.
And I deem, and I told you this over the phone, but I deem the Eddie George situation to be different than the others. I think Eddie, did a lot for, HBCU, especially with that lawsuit, engineering, and backing and being the voice for that lawsuit that got HBCUs over 100 million, whatever. You can look that up. It was HBCUs were underfunded by $1 billion in the states as far as state funding. That's just fucking nuts. And that alone, kind of, I just don't give a damn what he did from there, because that was enough, And but being there and turning around that program, and he was never a face. He kind of was just there quietly, just doing his thing, and that was it. Deion overshadowed him. Now Vic and Deshaun Jackson was overshadowing him as he was still technically a coach at Tennessee State. All of that stuff. A lot of people forget Eddie George was even a coach at HBCU.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He maintained a very low profile.
Yeah.
And seemed, very in tune with just doing that job and being the best that he could be for Tennessee State without trying necessarily to be, some bigger ambassador of HBCU football.
Yeah. No, 100%. Now he's going to Bowling Green. Now, I didn't think necessarily that Eddie George had turned around Tennessee State that much that he can turn into what he would deem to be a better coaching opportunity, but that's what happened. We'll see what happens at Bowling Green. And which is, a tough program in itself.
If I recall correctly, I think that's where Urban Meyer got his start. Head coach there.
Yeah.
So.
He went from Bowling Green to Utah.
Yeah,
right. And
yeah.
Utah to Florida.
And I want to say there's another high-profile
that got it started
coach
at Bowling Green.
That started coach early at Bowling Green.
So it is highly possible. So maybe that's the stomping ground.
The pathway to greatness.
So. And now he maybe created a new pathway to greatness.
Yeah.
HBCU to Bowling Green, and then there you go.
Yeah.
All right. Where you want to go? March Madness?
Sure, why not? It's